Thanks very much, Eric. Who do we have this week that's going to do the preamble for us about the remote meeting?
I'm happy to do it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for continuing to make these meetings a priority. We're meeting today virtually due to the ongoing concerns of COVID. We are using this format to help keep people as safe as possible. And with that, I will kick it over to our facilitator, Jeff.
And I'll hand it to Liz Scherber, who's got kind of our housekeeping things that we're going to do here for the first 10 minutes or so, and then we have our panel today. So go ahead, Liz.
Great. So I'm just going to share my screen and let me know when you can see it.
See it?
Great. So this complicated diagram is our roadmap to our roadmap creation. So this is a timeline, and we are here at April 11th. This column outlines the individual meeting who has presented a panel or who will present a panel, and then kind of generally what's going to be happening from May until the end of June. And this meeting date is currently scheduled for the 20th. We're trying to decide, we have a state holiday for Juneteenth on the 20th now, and so we're trying to figure out if it happens on the 22nd or the 27th. So some internal coordination needs to happen. Just be aware that that date is not yet finalized. And so what is in these light blue boxes down here are kind of what the facilitators have mapped for you all to be working on at the various touch points. So we worked a while on why does this matter? We're now transitioning into what does this look like and how do we get there? And these like strategies are really coming out of that engagement that we're doing with the various audiences that we're bringing in and that we're reaching out to. And then we'll move into, after our meeting on the 25th, kind of this, how will this expand the Minnesota's economy? So like getting really deep into that justification and like the refining criteria of, is it sustainable, resilient, inclusive? So we'll get into that, and then we'll continue to refine drafts. So it's a lot of moving parts, but that's where we're at. And then these green boxes are kind of what where the staff will start to pick up more of that editing and writing piece. I think we'll see how that pans out. And then I just also want to flag for everyone this public input opportunity that we had mapped out. So we have our virtual town hall meeting from 5:30 to 7 on May 25th. And then that will launch this public input period that's a little bit more interactive than just emailing the generic email address. So that'll kick off then and go for about 2 weeks. And we'll have that information to look at when we're refining and moving toward the governor's office presentation. So any questions on this timeline? Okay. And thank you for those of you who responded to our survey. The next thing I want to touch on is this frequency of in-person meetings. So I'm going to transition us into a little Mentimeter activity, and I will put I'll put the link in the chat and also share my screen. So hold on one moment. And we heard split results from people on which meetings they can attend, and we only heard from about 8 council members. So the link is in the chat, and you should be able to access that. And you can select your preferences, and I think you can select up to 3. And this is our attempt at virtual dot voting.
So if we already did fill out the other form, do you want us to do this or?
Yeah, because we want to kind of see where people are landing, like, and discuss it with each other.
Yep.
And I put at the bottom what the topic of the meeting would be. Staff decided that for capacity reasons, the May 23rd meeting is going to be virtual because the virtual town hall is following that, and it's a big time commitment for staff. So the 23rd is going to be virtual regardless.
I don't know, maybe I'm the only clueless one here, but how do we do this?
I can only see the presenter view, so maybe Nick or Elizabeth, if you want to explain what the non-presenter view looks like, that would be helpful.
Jeff, I went down to the bottom right and clicked on the person and then dragged it up to the choice that I wanted to make.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's what I needed. Great.
If I can figure it out, I'm pretty sure anybody can.
You're way ahead of me. Thank you. All right, so it's May 9th. Click.
So 7 of you have responded so far. That's this icon is telling me.
And the June 21st is a Tuesday. Obviously, we must all know that.
Yeah, so June 20th is now a state recognized holiday for Juneteenth. So the June 21st or June 27th meeting, it has not yet been finalized what date works. So.
Okay.
So feel free to continue to fill this, to add your dots, but I'm sensing that we'll probably plan to have at least the end of June meeting in person, and we'll discuss this more with the executive team, but I want to move us along so we can get our presenters teed up. So the next thing I'll share is this kind of where we're at snapshot. So we've written a couple of sections of the roadmap. We finalized our vision. And now you're going to, sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo. We're up next, we're going to meet with each other in person on the 25th. And excitingly, Amy is going to join us. So you all get a chance to meet Amy, and she's excited to hop back in and help us with some in-person facilitation. So us facilitators kind of revel in those few rare opportunities. So she's excited to hop back on, where we'll look at synergies and address gaps kind of across the roadmap holistically and intersectionally. And then we'll continue to outline sections of the roadmap, continue to engage with people. We'll host the virtual town hall, finalize the roadmap, and present to the governor's office. So easier said than done, but that is what is up next. And then this slide is our hybrid meeting details. And we will also send this over email, but I just want to let everyone know we're going to be hosting it at the DHS building in St. Paul for 540 Cedar Street. There's parking at the Children's Museum parking ramp, which is a block away. That's probably the most reliable parking. There's a few spots in the ramp that's attached to the DHS building, and there's also street parking, some 2-hour and some 4-hour. So that is that, and then the agenda will be, we'll have the World Cafe style small groups from subgroup 1, which will be a really engaging conversation. And then we will move toward the large group discussion on gaps and synergies. So that is the last of the administrative details, and I will hand it over to Jeff and Nick for the business supports presenters.
Do we know if we have all the presenters now online? I see it looks like Corey's just waiting to get in maybe, or I think I saw Rod, but I don't know if I saw Doug yet.
Corey, can we do a sound check?
Absolutely. How are you this afternoon?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
And Doug has not joined us yet.
Okay. Is Rod on? Have we been able to sound check him yet?
And
I am here. I am here if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Great. Thanks so much.
Great.
Poor retired Doug is probably like me. He's his own tech person, and that's always a risk.
He's just enjoying this beautiful day.
Well, you know, we got to enjoy it while we can. Maybe I don't want to lose too much of our time. Doug definitely, I'm sure, will be joining us, but I just wanted to welcome our presenters. So Doug Baker will be joining us, and also Corey Berry and Rod Young. Our subcommittee is myself, Nick Peterson helps us, and then Scott Burns and Jody Hubler will be doing the moderation of this panel today. You hear plenty from me, so I thought it made more sense to let them lead the cause. And I did see Doug is now popping in. Are you with us yet, Mr. Baker?
I am. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. I sure can. So I will turn it over to Scott and Jody to lead our panel. But I want to thank all the panelists in advance for joining us today.
Excellent. Well, thanks to the three of you for joining. We really appreciate it, and we want to take full advantage of your time. So you're all people that are fairly well known, and I think for that reason we're gonna jump we're gonna combine your intro with a question, and start with maybe we'll start with Rod. Introduce yourself, and we'll ask the same question of all three of you. Just introduce yourself briefly and share why Minnesota being nationally recognized as a top state to start, grow, and expand a business matters to you.
I'm Rod Young. I'm the CEO and president of Delta Dental of Minnesota. And I'll be brief. From a business perspective, business continuity here is urgent for us. We have 4.5 million members across the country, and of that, 2.5 million of them are here in the state of Minnesota. And organizations, corporations like Best Buy and Ecolabs are very important to us from an employee perspective, from a membership perspective. And then from a state perspective, for where we would like people to come and live and raise their families, we've got a significant amount of individual and family subscribers. So that's a very brief, and we can drill down if we need to.
Excellent. Corey, can we hear from you next?
Absolutely. My name is Corey Berry, and I am Rod and Doug's biggest fan. So it's fun to be here on a panel with them. I'm also the CEO of Best Buy. So I'm passionate about this question for two reasons. One, I am born and bred in Minnesota. I grew up in Cambridge, which is an hour north of the Twin Cities. I have known my whole life working at various companies, everything from a cashier at County Market. I worked at Deloitte here in the Twin Cities. So I have a very strong point of view about just why it matters for me very personally. On top of that, though, Best Buy completely believes that we are a top state to grow and expand a business, because that's our experience. That's our life. We grew from a single Sound of Music store in St. Paul that was opened in 1966 to become the largest consumer electronics retailer in the country at $52 billion. And I don't think that happens without the support networks of this community. And we believe it's imperative that continue to achieve our goals as a company. We need Minnesota to continue to achieve its goals and create those conditions for communities and all of our residents to reach their full potential.
All right. Doug.
Oh, I agree.
Perfect answer. Perfect answer.
Well, I don't know if there's a ton to add. I think without a healthy economy, it's very difficult to have a healthy society. It by itself won't create a healthy society, but it's certainly a really important ingredient. And for Minnesota to continue to progress, I think we can't take the economy for granted. And I mean, it's what this group is looking to do. I completely agree with that. And it needs to be broader based.
Excellent. Well, Jody's going to take you through the next couple of questions, get a little deeper.
I was going to say, bring a different voice to this as well. So, Corey, let's start with you. Clearly, you talk about the legacy and the history and what it's taken to grow from a Sound of Music, in the 60s on through. So what are the strengths of this market that you leverage as a business leader? And double pronged to that is, has it changed coming out of the pandemic or during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, clearly I'm biased, so probably shouldn't ask me, but I do believe that in Minnesota you have a very educated workforce, but also a workforce that is very embedded in a civic culture. And I think it's a workforce that believes that businesses do well when our communities do well, and has a very balanced point of view about how important it is to be a good partner to the communities. And I think that's really important for our corporate culture. We talk a lot about purpose, as I know these other leaders with me do as well. And we believe our purpose here at Best Buy is to enrich lives through technology. And now, post-pandemic, with nearly every aspect of our lives dependent on technology, that purpose is even more relevant than ever. But it's interesting, it's also created unique competition, where it used to be kind of our community was really what most of us pulled from as people who hire and create vibrant businesses. There's now a lot more competition throughout the entire US as you see remote work and hybrid work and those ways of living. And so I think as even more of some of the inequities of our state and our community have come to the forefront, I think we have an almost a renewed sense of purpose, or an even much larger sense of our responsibility to the community, because we need this to be a competitive and vibrant place for businesses to grow.
Thank you, Corey. Rod, we'll come to you next. What, from your perspective, what are the strengths in this market, and did it change coming through or coming out of COVID?
I don't know that it's changed, but I would list, as Corey mentioned, technology is very important for us. As an example, we opened a technology call center in Bemidji 2.5 years ago on the strength of the high-speed fiber optics that are in Bemidji, as an example. I mentioned the Fortune 500 concentration of companies that are here. I think that's a gigantic draw for us as a state. We have some of the nation's, if not the nation's, leading healthcare. If you go, just as an example, Allina Health, obviously Mayo Clinic, Fairview, Hennepin Health, Health Partners, Park Dental, Metro Dental, all of those are known nationally as top leading healthcare corporations or organizations. We are a leader in med technology. You look up the street and you see Medtronic and Boston Scientific, St. Jude Medical as an example. A leader in higher education. I'm a big proponent, a big fan of the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Business. Of course, we know their School of Dentistry very well. Their School of Medicine is top notch, as well as St. Thomas University and all the other colleges that are available here in the state. From a professional sports perspective, that's something that we can leverage also. We've got all of the major professional sports. We recently got a new stadium. We have Target Field, Target Center, Excel Energy. And then last but not least, the outdoor life that's here, from the lakes to the bike trails. And traditionally, Minnesota has been a good place to raise families. Now there are some exceptions that we may get into in terms of different communities, but so I think about leveraging all of those, and often talk about that when I'm recruiting and trying to get individuals to come here.
Thank you, Rod. Doug, what's your perspective on the strengths?
Yeah, I agree. I think workforce, we like probably many of the companies here, we started as a small business in 1929 and have made it all the way, or excuse me, 1923, single proprietorship that grew into Ecolab overall. So that what we gain from the community today is different than what we did. So as we sit today, we're in 170 countries. 4% of our employee base is in Minnesota, only 1% of sales. And the only reason I say that is what's important to us now is different than what was important to us 20 years ago. You say, well, we're talking about startups. We went and did a survey. We have started up 35 businesses in Minnesota in the last 25 years. And this is because there's a lot of things that we need, we don't do well. So then we find entrepreneurs and others who will do them for us, get suppliers to start new businesses, et cetera. So a big part of the ecosystem is the big corporations. I don't think it's well understood how important that is in terms of intellectual capital and frankly just needs that drive new business formation in this place. So what's important? What I would ask this committee not to lose sight of is primary, secondary education is vital for us to attract the talent we need to help run these businesses. Safety, public safety is a big deal. We have lost several recruits over the last year because of the public safety issues that are unfortunately well publicized beyond Minnesota. So this is a very important part of the environment that we need to be cognizant of. And then I would agree, continuing to have a strong arts and entertainment area is also important, which Rod just went through. But I don't think we can take for granted education and public safety. And where we're failing in education is unfortunately the fastest growing part of the population, people of color. And that's going to be increasingly a bigger and bigger problem for Minnesota and as a result for companies here.
Thank you, Doug. And you've taken us right into that next question. Rod, would like to come to you on drawing out additional perspective. Where do you wish the state would do more or less to enable business growth?
I don't know that I have a less, and much like Doug, and Corey, there are gigantic benefits for being in the state. Gigantic fan of the state. So I summarize that. Let's repackage and tell our story, and tell our story both externally and internally. But let's tell our story. As an example, I know that Commissioner Grove's team just launched a website some months ago that's got some pretty cool content in it about who we are as a state and what it means to do business in the state. So I would repackage that and put that in the marketplace. And I'm probably going to be tactical in some of this, but I would also include not only the business community, the large and small corporations. Obviously, we got the large corporations on this call, but to help craft that message, I'd include messaging from the communities that we would include in there also. And then talk maybe about some of the incentives that are available, both financial and other, that would make this, so the state should do more of that, I guess is how I would say that. And then this is the tactical part of this, and I know enough about this to be really dangerous, but maybe we have a high energy social media campaign to go out and tell our story. And we leverage some of the really special things that are here. I just listed a couple of them. Being a basketball fan, we get Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know that he'd be a great spokesperson, but we do have some the Timberwolves are winning now. Maybe we could leverage some of that. Happen to know Michelle Young. She's not our daughter, but she was on The Bachelorette. We're some that are smiling from that perspective, but maybe we use some of her talent and attraction. And let's get the governor out there and making some social media campaign pledges. And I'm thinking about millennials, and I'm thinking about college students, and I'm thinking about inviting those type of individuals to come and be part of our state.
Yeah, Rod, you're hitting on one of the things that our subcommittee picked on when, North Dakota is singing and welcoming and calling our state out by name. bringing us in. But I also do remember when Joe Mauer tried to sing. I think it was 8 years ago, as on a commercial. That was an experience. So
I didn't say it was a good idea, but I just
no, it's important. Corey, you clearly have such a unique perspective, given the broad swath of territories. You get such a unique perspective about where we can get more opportunities, really leveraging the state differently. So same to you. What would you wish for us to take into consideration, the do more and do less to enable that business growth?
Yeah, I bet you don't get many people who ever say do less, do you? That's kind of a bummer. I would absolutely reinforce what Rod said, and I'm not going to double what he had articulated. I'm actually going to pick up where Doug left off a bit. We all, and I've spent enough time with the individuals on this call and many other leaders in the Twin Cities, we all see huge benefits when our workforce reflects the diversity of our communities. And not only that, but to Doug's point, these are absolutely some of the fastest growing parts of our population. We know flat out employees are more productive when they feel like they can bring their whole selves both to work, but also they feel like valued and they feel safe in their own communities. And it's interesting, I hear too many other leaders say, well, there's just not enough BIPOC talent in the Twin Cities. So we just can't find enough of a pipeline. We have an amazing untapped pipeline of talent in the Twin Cities. And I do think the state can help us do more to ensure every Minnesotan, regardless of their zip code, has access to the education, the development, and the employment opportunities that are available. And I think that does also mean we need safe communities where every community can thrive, not just certain communities can thrive. And so I think if we, and trust me, I'll talk later. I mean, this is public-private. I'm not saying it's just you, but there is so much space here to unlock potential in Minnesota. And when they see, like, I love bringing in people from outside, and then we also have to unlock our own people who live here in our communities, because I think if we can do that, that also is a draw for other families, that it becomes a safe place to raise your family, it becomes a safe place to move to, but it also becomes this amazing pipeline of talent that we can tap into right here in the Twin Cities.
Thank you, Corey. Scott?
Did we, I must have missed Doug on that one. Did we hear from Doug on that one? We did, okay.
No.
What you said was super.
No, hold on.
No.
Doug kicked us off and he went from the strength. Excuse me, Doug, because I captured both of your messages around the incentives. Thank you, Scott, for coming back to that. So Doug, sorry, I used you as a mechanism to transition, and let's get back to make sure we get the fullness of your response. I apologize.
Yeah, I guess I would only add, I think if you look at other communities where they've been quite successful, and I think we have success right now in terms of new business formation, if you look at recent statistics. However, we could do more. And it does revolve around kind of formation of intellectual capital around certain groups. The university is a huge asset for us. It's been a obviously large investment made over decades and decades by the state, which has paid dividends in the past and I think could pay more dividends. It's also understanding the corporate community is a big part of the intellectual capital. The people that leave us often start businesses and do other things. You know, I'd say federal tax policy and federal immigration policy is nuts, mostly immigration, because I now have, I don't know, about 200 engineers in Pune, India, all of which would be employed in Minnesota. 65% were educated in the United States. So now they're paying taxes to India, not to the US. And when they leave, they start businesses in India, not in the United States. So it's just bad policy getting in the way of new business formation. Example, it's federal, not state. So I think this intellectual capital is not unimportant. And I do think there's been helpful policy. I've been an angel investor, more as a hobby, certainly not a pro, but the investor, the angel investment credit, et cetera. I mean, that type of policy I think is good. The problem is it's such a low limit on not the credit necessarily back to the investor. I don't know what the right number is there, but I think it runs out of what, $5 million or something. I mean, it's like it's ridiculously small, if you're really serious about going to drive this. And I think that part of it being focused on people of color and women-owned businesses makes sense, et cetera. I mean, all that, there's a great idea there that is completely under-leveraged, all right, I would say. But I think around intellectual capital, trying to say, are we going to be around ag? What do we do around this? Do we fund the university to form an ag group? Do we incent people to bring more of their R&D here? I have a big R&D center in Greensboro, North Carolina. I have a big one in Chicago. And people go, why don't you move them here? I said, well, it costs me more to move them here. It costs me more in real estate and real estate taxes on any number of fronts. Makes no sense to do it for us as a business. Why don't you make it make sense for us to do it as a business? And what you want is more research here, in my mind, because research is really the bedrock of the spin-offs and everything else as you go. So I think there can be very targeted ploys. You don't have to get after the whole corporate tax rate, but you could be much more aggressive on R&D credits or even how you think about them, right, to drive what I would say is permanent moves, because you really do this once in a lifetime. Nobody moves R&D willy-nilly back and forth. But I do think the state thinking through this could probably make a great play given the number of companies you have here. But every one of us has big research outside of the state too. Right? You want it.
Thank you, Deb.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got to hear from you on that, Doug. Those are some really good ones. I think we'll go back to Corey. And you had talked about we're trying to tackle as part of this council, this idea of catalyzing progress toward an equitable, inclusive, sustainable, and resilient economy, which is a big number of things to take on. And you were just sharing some of your perspective on the importance of and the strength of bringing diversity into the workforce. And I think that there's a lot more to equity and inclusion than that. But I'm interested in your perspective on what large enterprises are most effective at doing in promoting equity right now and inclusion, and any thoughts on what the state should be doing to help in that arena.
Yeah, I'm impressed by this collective group's remit. It is a large task that you are undertaking. I think the good news is, from a corporate perspective, many of our remits are very much aligned with what you're trying to accomplish, not just seeing this as a vibrant community, but all of us are really looking at our own responsibility in creating a more equitable and inclusive Minnesota economy. So the beautiful thing is, like, our interests aligned here. And I think you've got companies, and I'm sure both Doug and Rod will have many of their own examples, but you've got companies that on so many different angles are trying to represent our communities differently than we ever have before. I mean, at Best Buy, we just blatantly said we need to do better. And so we've made commitments around hiring. We've committed that 1 out of every 3 new salaried corporate positions will be a BIPOC employee. And our 1 out of 3 field positions will be women, because we have slightly different representation issues depending on where you are in the country. We've committed to $1.2 billion with BIPOC and diverse businesses for suppliers and representation in the tech industry, so we can help build their businesses. We also announced our own $10 million investment in Minneapolis-based Brown Venture Group, which is a venture capital firm, back to the idea of kind of like, how do we build businesses here that's focused on BIPOC tech startups. So we're really trying hard to just make our own level of commitments. But beyond that, back to what I talked about before, pipelines for our youth are a place that we are incredibly passionate about. And I think for us as a community, it is incredibly important. We need to start the process early to make sure that students have access and understand what might be potential for them to for the tech jobs of the future. So we are opening teen tech centers across the country, but we have a number of them here in the Twin Cities. And the goal is, starting at middle school, provide students visibility, provide them access, ensure that they have the ability to see what some of those tech careers could look like, and then mentorship and mental health resources to really help them through into those amazing systems like Doug was talking about, the University of Minnesota, or like Rod was talking about with just the bevy of educational programs that we have in this city. And so we are trying really hard to let others see what that potential could be. And then finally, just from a hiring perspective, we're thinking very differently about four-year college requirements or micro-credentials or internships and apprenticeship programs that will have employment guarantees at the end. And I think those could be very interesting to your final question, like this public-private partnership, wherever you can take the kind of energy and momentum of the large companies and the medium-sized and the small ones here in the Twin Cities and find ways to create those joint programs. I think that could be really powerful spaces, and internships, apprenticeships, employment guarantees. I think those could be really powerful pipelines into all these amazing companies that exist here. And then I'll stop. I have limitless passion, clearly.
That's amazing. And I guess trying to digest that long, impressive list, I'm wondering, since you do business elsewhere, you're opening the tech centers in different places, any differential observations about what other states are doing? Are there any states, because you're out and passionate about this issue, where some program, some approach, some public-private partnership jumps out as more effective than what we have here?
Yeah, we have one. I'll use a very specific example. We have one partnership with LA County. And there we are kind of flooding LA County with teen tech centers. We're putting 12 teen tech centers in LA County, but they are also, the county is working with us with some of the infrastructure funding that they have to partner with us to provide access, both broadband and physical access, with their kind of public funds. And then we're also partnering with a foundation, the Annenberg Foundation there. So you kind of have a foundation partnership, a state partnership, and a corporate partnership that is bringing together a really dedicated set of pipelines. And then we're moving those right into, the reason we're in LA is because they're going right into entertainment jobs. The pipeline is into tech jobs. Every entertainment job behind the scenes is all tech right now. I mean, it's all laying fiber. It's just amazing. And so what we're building are real accreditation programs. So by the time someone leaves high school, they have enough accreditation to go right into tech programs into that community. So where I see it work best, and it's true here too, and it's why I talked about pipelines into our companies, leverage the strengths. And you started there, Scott. What are the strengths we have? Leverage those strengths and then build these public-private partnerships that will push into strengths. And I do think, just from our perspective, we're a little bit different. We don't have as much R&D. We don't have as much as some of the other, but I mean, we employ across the country 100,000 people. And so we are really working hard on the pipeline question and how we just better pipeline talent faster into the new tech jobs of the future.
Well, that's great. Those kinds of examples. Our time here today is so short, so feel free to pass anything along in addition to that one you just gave. That's really great. Doug, you've been working on this, these issues of equity and inclusion in the economy for many years, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on where you feel big enterprises in particular, are most effective in promoting equity and inclusion, and how the state could be helping better.
Yeah, I'll go back. I mean, I think continuing to make this an attractive place to live. Only government can really get after the education, public safety, and some of the other just infrastructure investments. Business can't do it. As CEO, I could do everybody else's job, but nobody could do mine. So if I'm doing others, I'm not doing mine, then nobody's doing it. Government has to understand its central role is making sure this stuff gets done. And I'm going to be quite blunt. I think we're failing on education, and we are failing on public safety. So it's not unimportant, because we're trying to attract people. And we've had several African-American candidates who have really been very reticent. We lost one because of the noise here, and this is not helping. Okay, so we just have to put this out there as an issue. With that said, I think if you went inside any of our organizations, I think you would be, there's this belief among corporate America is not on board with equity and inclusion. And I would say all my experience is quite opposite. We measure down to by position, retention, promotion, by every ethnic category, by women, female. We do it, we drive this around the world. And I think one of the blessings of US companies going around the world is we've brought, frankly, women's careers up in particular dramatically. Japan, you're not going to find a lot of ethnic diversity. You do find women. And you know, every one of our companies is pushing stuff. We're way ahead on GLBT issues. Corporations were, right, on all these issues. And the reason is because we're all teammates. And you know that you need great teammates if you're going to be a great team, and you quickly get over all this other noise and start driving. It doesn't mean we're perfect, and we're all trying to understand how to create better. What can the state do? Well, probably celebrate success instead of assuming guilt. So, you know, we get people come in from the state and they ask for every one of the applications we've received because they want to go see how we're doing on these things. Now, I'll just say it's ironic because then you go meet a lot of people in the state and you know how they got their job. It's patronage. And so you're sort of going, geez, you know, I don't know. I don't see this great example in all these places, to be quite honest. And what we're trying to do is get better. So how about forums about how to share ideas across and other things? I'll throw this out there. I mean, we get a lot of bureaucracy. I don't know that we get a lot of help. From the Fed, I think we had 40 EEOC audits. They had 0 findings. I'll probably have 50 next year. And we've had 0 findings for 7 years in a row. It's like an amazing thing, but you know, it's just like audit after audit after audit. And you know, you can't get off the damn docket on some of these things. We'd much rather have HR talent recruiting, teaching, promoting, and doing all these other things. So I just put that out there. You know, we are guilty until proven innocent is how it feels on a lot of these subjects. And I don't think facts bear it out. The biggest equity thing that I think we learned during COVID, there's a number, right? Health, these are, a lot of things were laid bare that existed, but the connectivity rate of the internet is a huge issue. And I hope it makes your report. We have got to understand, you know, we've got to get everybody, every damn house on the internet. And it's not just getting the fiber optic, which, you know, I wish I had fiber optic here. It's not just getting a cable into the house. We got to pay for the dang thing and make sure they also have adequate technology to capitalize on the internet. And without it, I think people are put in such a disadvantage. And it certainly was with remote learning, but it is just taking advantage and learning how to compete in tomorrow's world. So, you know, with education, I think it's just one of the bedrock things that the state can do. And we need to invest more. We need to, frankly, give this stuff away to people who can't afford it so that they have access to this. You know, we have public libraries, but frankly, that's not the way it works anymore. You know, the library needs to get brought into the home like it is in my home. And every home that's represented here, every home in Minnesota's got to have that, or every, frankly, citizen in the country's got to have it. It's almost like healthcare, for crying out loud.
Excellent. Well, I think there is, you'll pay close attention because there's been a lot of money and thinking recently on broadband, but what you're sharing about the impact on equity is something that's just super important. So Rod, to you, just thinking about, you know, what can enterprises be doing, or what are they doing best to promote equity and inclusion, and what should the state be doing to help?
So first, let me say how proud and excited I am to be sharing this call with both Corey and Doug, because they too, and I've gotten a chance to know them particularly post-George Floyd's killing, as we've been working with the Minnesota Business Partnership. They are two of our leading leaders, if you will, CEOs in our community that are putting all of their actions and significant amount of funding behind making sure that this state is one that is inclusive and there's equity. And I can't add to or change anything that they mentioned, because again, they're out front. I will share with you though, as I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee for the Minnesota Business Partnership. In addition to Corey and Doug, there are multiple leaders in this state that are doing significant things. And as Doug said, it's almost like we're guilty, but if you looked closer, there's a lot of things that are going on. Now there's some distance to travel, and there's some things that we need to focus on and get at that will take a gigantic lift. You know, Doug talked about education and about public safety. Yet we need to talk to some of the CEOs and talk to some of the corporations, because there's tons and tons of great efforts that are going on. And the corporations that are doing it are you know, they are bread and butter, you know, household names that are doing it and doing it in a large fashion. The only thing I would add is in terms of, and it's not necessarily on the state, but if we all start thinking about this, you know, this conversation around equity, inclusion, that has to start in the corporation, start in the boardrooms. And again, Corey and I can't, I'm really very proud and excited to know them and to work with them. But it has to go into the communities, it has to go into the school systems, and ultimately, hopefully those conversations will start happening in our homes, where things will change for us as a state. So nothing in addition from a technical or tactical perspective to add, other than complimenting and very excited about Corey and Doug.
Well, thanks. I'll stay with you then for the next question, because it's kind of circles back to almost everything we've been talking about. This is the question where we ask you to do our work for us. So where would you invest state resources, just thinking more broadly, this idea of being a top state to start, grow, and expand business? Where would you invest state resources to help us achieve that vision? I know you've mentioned some things. I don't want to miss anything. And then, specifically, if there's anything on your mind where you're like, this one or two things would be a great area to put weight behind, or to step out of the way, any ideas are welcome.
So coming from healthcare, from that space, the things, and this may already be happening, and I don't know all that the state is doing, but organizations like Medical Alley, and I don't say that because we have, but I know Medical Alley very well, and I, from my background and being around med device and med tech, there is so much good stuff going on here from a medical technology perspective. And so I would say let's invest in that. And I'm not even sure, there used to be, way back in the day, there used to be World Trade Associations downtown St. Paul. I'm not sure if that's still going on. I go back to social media. And again, I'm going to step in a space that I don't know very well, but maybe that Meta thing that Facebook is doing is something that we should be using to attract the younger talent, the millennials, into our space. I think that there should be marketing campaigns highlighting our university, this, not only the University of Minnesota, but again, the colleges that we have here in this state are vast and very special. There's a lot of talk around tech startups, but maybe there's a tech startup alley that can be created here from that perspective. And then back to, I can't remember if it was Corey or Doug that mentioned it, but let's catch the students when they're coming out of elementary school. You may or may not be aware that there is a dental hygienist and a dental assistant shortage. Not like there's several, obviously there's several jobs that there's shortages in, but that's a job that you can go into right out of high school. And so we should be focusing on maybe trying to identify, and some of these jobs are paying $35 an hour right now. So that could be an area just as one that we might be able to focus on as a state.
Thank you. Corey, to you with that same kind of open question of anything you want to make sure we don't forget before leaving, or don't miss before leaving you, on areas where the state could really put its weight behind helping us achieve this vision.
Yeah, I would build on what I think are some excellent suggestions by Rob and Doug, and I'm not copying. I did write this down before we did this. There are two places. One is broadband, period. I think we could be disproportionately benefited if we just ensured everybody in the state had broadband. I mean, I go to my dad's house and I have to tell my team, like, sorry, you're not going to be able to reach me for 2 days. I'm at dad's. It's reality in rural, and it's reality for many who just don't have access in our disadvantaged communities as well. So that's one. Two builds on where Rod left off, and that is workforce. We all want, every company wants, and I appreciate the accolades, Rod, but there are so many people who are working. We want our workforce to match our community. And that means we need development of all young people. And so we are investing ourselves. We're putting, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars into programs like teen tech centers, but those can be very rich partnerships with states. So I'll give, again, a specific example, Scott, since you're looking for them. We are doing a pilot program this fall with the state of Minnesota. So high school seniors in our tech centers will participate in structured career training programs to learn tech skills like coding and software development, as well as workforce readiness skills, some of the EQ side of things. At the end of the internships, they're eligible to apply for apprenticeship positions that will eventually lead into permanent job offers. And so we're working to partner with the state so that we might be able to recognize those pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship programs to signal competency to employers. So credit for prior learning at community colleges or providing stipends to students so that they're not choosing between helping their family and acquiring skills. They don't have to be, I love Rod's example of a hygienist. These don't have to be even 2-year programs. There are 6-month coding boot camps that can get people right into 6-figure jobs at this point. So I think what we're trying to figure out is, can we more proactively build those bridges? And it's a great place, I think, for some public-private partnership, because we all need, we don't only just need more, we need different talent than we've needed historically.
That's terrific. Thanks. Doug, to you for this kind of open question.
Yeah, I just got a few. Some are repetitive. So education, Minneapolis in particular, I think is a reform issue, not an investment issue. Meaning reform without money is going to probably bring a lot more benefit than money without reform, and it's going to be bankrupt in a couple of years if we don't do something. And hope maybe the state takes it over. I don't know. We do need to invest in broadband. I'm completely on board, and I think a major investment bringing people online, investing in the university as maybe a startup hub, or hubs connected to the university around things like ag, biotech, other areas, I think could really facilitate startup communities. We invested in Techstars in St. Paul in partnership with Cargill. Number of those companies have stayed here as a consequence. Scott knows, he's the landlord as he's gone through. So I mean, it's a lot of this stuff has worked, but I think that idea of using and leveraging the university more overtly could be a good place to start. I think getting, some policy right. So I cited one. I think the angel investment credit is a good one. I just think, and this isn't a gripe of amount of taxes. It doesn't, I'm not going to waste any time on that, but even how taxes are structured in business, too often we structure them where they harm Minnesota-based businesses uniquely. So the state business income tax is equally applied to all businesses. It's based on sales in Minnesota, right? So Apple has the same exposure as Ecolab, but we have a very high business property tax. It uniquely impacts startups and small Minnesota businesses. It's how you tax, and thinking through strategically, right? What are we trying to do? And I would not be trying to put businesses that are based in Minnesota at a disadvantage versus other businesses not based in Minnesota. Even if you want to tax businesses higher, you can do it in a way that doesn't disadvantage them, i.e. the state income tax is an example of not putting businesses at a disadvantage. Property tax and others do. And so just thinking through some of those policy things do matter over time, because it's like gravity. Even if it's not a heavy amount of gravity. It just slowly wears on you, right? So why do that? And thinking through some of that thing, I think could help. And then, I just think fostering an environment, talking about how we want startups, there is truth to this idea of creating an environment where you feel welcome. And so that's true for entrepreneurs too. And so I think this happy talk in a sense, but going out there overtly, and I think it was Rod mentioned, do we get the governor on and others, entrepreneurs are not only welcome here, right? We really want to create an environment for you to thrive and to succeed long term. And I think that message is not unimportant. It really does matter if you're trying to get a team and a culture to move.
That's great. Jody, I know we chewed up a little more time on that one.
We needed to, though.
That's great. Do you have any final? I'll hand it off to you for any final
questions.
Yeah,
I think we pulled Jeff in too. So Jeff, please feel free to come off of mute. I think, we appreciate the significant time that the three of you have offered, not only to us on our subcommittee, but to this broader council. We had prepared for, your ability to, that open-ended question, right? What are the questions or issues that we should be prioritizing that we haven't asked you about? And I guess before we leave, I want to make sure that there's any last comments before the other council members. And then, Jeff, I think you can bring us to close. I know we were going to run up against our 3:45 time. So, Rod, any last comments or areas that we've missed that you feel are critical for our group to hear from you?
I just want to reinforce what Doug mentioned. Maybe peer-to-peer conversations with those that are trying to think about coming into our state might help. CEO talking to a potential CEO coming in town. And then I don't know if there's such a thing as a state navigator. In healthcare, they have navigators to help you get through all of the craziness associated with that. But maybe we should think about a navigator to help, because there are help access to resources, because there's actually tons of resources available that maybe those that are thinking about coming here don't know about. So,
thank you, Rod. Doug, anything last comments from you?
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Corey.
I just want to thank all of you. You are tackling an incredibly large remit. And so we appreciate your time and energy on this. It's not easy to boil the ocean like we just asked you to do. So thank you for what you're doing. And I think it's the right time. I think the world has gotten more competitive overnight because people are working in new ways, which means in order to entice, whether we're bringing new people here or the importance of just ensuring our pipelines are better is more relevant and important than ever. So just thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Jeff, I'll hand it over and back to you.
Just if I could ask just one quick follow-up question of Corey before the panel leaves, because this has come up in our other sessions with the panel, with our own council members. You mentioned your internship program affiliated with the high schools. Is that a paid program?
We have different options. We have a paid program. We have a not paid program. We have a few different ways that we're trying to work it, Jeff.
I know that's come up as a concern for some folks, from the communities where it's okay. It's just a lot to ask to do the time, but also if they can't get some income from that.
Yeah, so that's what we've been trying to build in paid as well. That's where I think some of the partnerships too. I mean, there's scholarships. I think there just could be a really interesting pipelining question here.
I mean, we asked the panelists to stay with us till 3:45. If any of them are willing to stay a couple more minutes and take questions from the full council, that is certainly welcome. But if you have to run, that's totally understandable as well. We have 15 more minutes total for our program, or 13.
Thank you. I have to run. I apologize.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Very good.
Thank you.
Doug, you willing to stay a couple minutes?
Yeah, I can stay a minute or two. Sure.
Okay. So does anybody have questions? Why don't we see if anybody has any specific questions for Doug?
Well, Jeff, never to be one to let a good conversation go. Doug, thank you. And thanks to our other panelists. I just reflect on in our small group, in our subcommittee, we've been talking a lot about scale And we do have a ton of good work going on here. And I agree, Doug, and certainly Corey touched on this. A lot of actually really good work that goes on in our corporations and in our private sector here. It strikes us in our small group, if I can speak for our small group, that we tend not to get to scale with these things, that actually really good ideas need to be taken to scale. Doug, your point exactly about the angel tax credit. Drop in the bucket, right? Drop in the bucket relative in particular even to what businesses of color need. And so what insights do you have about how do you take work to scale and really push for transformation? That's a big question in our small group where we're talking about housing, education. I couldn't agree with you more on education, right? Where we're talking about transportation, we're talking about childcare. All systems that are largely actually kind of sort of work, but they're not getting to where we really need to get. So how do you take some of these really good ideas and good public-private partnerships and really drive them to scale?
Well, I'm a big believer in democracy, but not an adherent to it within the business. So, I mean, the biggest advantage I think businesses have on this is, look, I ran Ecolab for 16 and a half years. So you have significant continuity. You have the ability, if you will, to drive things through kind of the fallow period. You know, people drop a lot of seeds in the ground, they get impatient, they don't come up and they replow the ground. And you need to be able to, one, sometimes you have the right direction, but the wrong start. And you've got to be willing and able to go fix and adjust and go. I mean, look, one of the challenges obviously government has is election cycles. You know, Republicans take over, Democrats take over, you know, they each wash out each other's programs. And those are challenges. I think if there was bigger coalitions built around some of these things, it could be fruitful. So if it is, you guys come out with a plan to go, if you will, better create an even more fertile environment for startups, which includes some policy mechanisms, and work then to get buy-in broadly in the community, that we may have a better chance of keeping these policies in place as we go forward. That it's not a Democrat idea or Republican idea, it's a good idea for the state, and you got constituents on both sides of the aisle, i.e. funders and donors, who buy into these things also, like the angel tax credit. When I heard it was is it $5 million? Somebody told me that. I mean, I couldn't, it's almost like, I don't even know how it is a great idea, but I don't know how somebody got to 5.
It's grown a little and it bounces around. Some years it's been 0 the last few years. It's just never really been plussed up.
Yeah. Well, anyway, anyway.
Neil, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Doug, thanks for being here. Really enjoyed your comments. You know, I'm reflecting on your comments, and my takeaway is a little bit, you touched on this, which is have government focus on the problems that only government can solve. So public safety is one, immigration is another. You're not going to do anything about national immigration policy as Ecolab. Only the government can fix that. Then I also think about, you know, just take worker training. There have been lots of attempts nationally at worker training programs, and almost all of them fail. The only worker training programs that work are those that are hyper local, where a business partners with a local college, with a local workforce agency, and they customize it for the needs of that business. And so this is kind of a rambling response, but it's kind of like, so I think about your angel tax credit. I mean, of all the problems that government needs to solve, I would humbly say, go solve immigration and go solve public safety and, you know, 0 through 12 education, and let business figure out how to fund startups, and let business how to do the other elements of competitiveness, only because if government could solve the big problems that only they can solve, boy, we'd make a lot of progress as a state and as a country.
Well, that's the heart of my message. I agree with that, Neil. I mean, honestly, I have written down here on policy. Okay, helpful policy, sure. But the truth is I'm not a huge believer. And I'm more worried about unhelpful policy. See St. Paul rent control, right? And I'm quite serious. It's just going to cream development. And so I'm more worried about, you know, what's in our way right now. What I'm more fearful of is our primary and secondary education, particularly in Minneapolis, right? I'm really worried about it. I grew up in Minneapolis schools, and you know, we go, this isn't going to hurt the corporations in Minneapolis. Let's be honest. I can hire people in 170 countries. It's killing the kids who are growing up in those communities and their future. I mean, it's just cutting them off at their knees. And so that's the stuff that I really worry about. And I think it's one of the, and without an education, without a belief that you can get into the system and the system's going to be halfway fair, then you don't have hope and belief. And then all kinds of other opportunities are open to you in your mind, right? Like criminal activity and all the rest. I mean, anybody. So I agree. I think that we need to make sure that that stuff's taken care of. If you have then extra time for some hobbies, then you can muck around in policy on these other areas. But if you're mucking in policy and you give me the world's best angel tax credit, public safety and education don't get fixed, it's not going to mean anything.
Juhi, go ahead. Juhi, you're still on mute, huh?
Doug, I think you addressed this a little bit in under your comments, but I mean, I think that you know, you can't talk about public safety without talking about education. You know, there's public safety has there's so many root causes, you know, to what drives a person into making, you know, bad choices. And you know, the comments that Neil just made around, you know, in reflection to your comment about government doing what government does and let let business take care of businesses just really makes me nervous. And I think one of the charges and values that we've all agreed upon as the council around addressing equity in the state of Minnesota. This isn't necessarily for you, Doug, but this is just to say that I really do feel like that is the role of government, right? To hold the whole entire system accountable, to bring back, to address the harms and wrongs of a very racist system. Right. And we need to adjust that, and we need to make those changes. And that is what I see as one of the goals of this group. And so I guess I'm just kind of reacting to what I was hearing in the conversation that makes me nervous to want to say, you know, to separate these things, because I think government has a role in addressing equity, undoing a lot of unjust harms that have happened, and in an exclusionary system, and that is what we're trying to address. And so I think that is the type of solutions that we're listening for from you, from Corey, and from Rod earlier as well, which I appreciated your comments. I thought they were very interesting, not coming from big business.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so I am. We are not, and we have not lived up. I believe our ideals are grand as a country, and we haven't lived up to them, right? And there are real issues in society that need to be addressed. And I will say, but a lot of them are frankly in government's purview. The criminal justice system is by nature, if you look at it, the outcomes are hard to explain under any other thing than it's racial. I can't influence that. You know, I'm trying to drive. We want talent. I can promise you, we do not. I mean, I want black. We need people of diverse backgrounds for a variety of reasons. We seek it. We go out after it. We spend a lot of money to try to find it and bring it on, and we will continue to do that. But we need even more. And I'm not a person who says there's not enough. Well, there's never enough. So we need more. But the education system's failing people of color, and the criminal justice system is is disproportionately arresting blacks and stopping blacks. I drive home from St. Paul in a Porsche, and a woman who works for me runs marketing, happens to be African American, drives a minivan. She gets pulled over 10 times. I get pulled over 0. How do you explain that? It's a Toyota minivan, right? It's because she's black. And so this is I just say that's real and needs to be addressed. And so we need to arrest criminals, but we need to do it we need police who doesn't beat up people at the same time. And so, we got to get this stuff figured out. Honestly, I can't do that. But if you guys don't fix this, you guys being the government writ large, I don't know how the hell this is going to get fixed. We're all going to have a private police department, which is what you find through South America, right? My last trip to India, I walked in, I'm walking around, guys have AK-47s ushering me into buildings. It's like horrible. And Lowry Hill now has formed, they're each taxing each other $200 a month, and they've got a separate security thing in Kenwood. Okay? And this is a bastion of liberalism. Okay, so this is what happens. And it's just, so that's my deal. And I'm with you. And, we do want to fix equity, but I just say some of these, I can't do that stuff. I can do other stuff. I can be an angel investor. I've invested in a black-owned business. I'm on the board, right? I'm investing in Brown. I'm investing in other things. I'll do all that stuff personally because I have a belief in it, but I can't fix the damn education system as hard as I try.
I think on that, we should call it a wonderful day. Thank you particularly to the panelists and also to Jody and Scott for taking the lead role in their questions. And maybe we'll have a little time at the beginning of our in-person session, which we're all very excited about in 2 weeks, to debrief a little bit about what we heard today if people still want to do that. But thank you all very much and look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everyone.